is the associate director that oversees this.
And is he responsible for releasing the draft report?
Yes.
And would you identify yourself, please? Step up.
Thank you.
Dr. Harlan, and my time is up, but this is an important point as to why a draft report is released. You are Dr. William R. Harlan, Associate Director for Disease Prevention of the National Institute of Health. And the question is, why release a draft report which causes such concern before it's in its final form?
The draft report was released for public comment and for comment by the scientists who attended the conference. And the panel intended to take that comment and does and will be taking that comment into consideration as it comes to a final report. We have been doing this, as Dr. Klausner mentioned, for about 20 years, and it has always worked reasonably well because we will make changes in it from that draft report. But it has given the public and other people outside of the panel a chance to comment on the report.
Okay, Senator Harkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I must admit to you that I have mixed feelings about this report. On the one hand, it does say to women that you should make your own decisions. You should be empowered to look at your own health background and to make these decisions yourself. I like that. People ought to be empowered to make those decisions. On the other hand, I'm concerned if the report, as this echoes of this report gets out, that somehow insurance companies and other coverers will begin to rescind or deny or cut back on coverage for women who do make that decision, who are in their 40s or maybe even earlier, but because of a family history or their own particular situation, they want to have a mammogram, but the coverage won't be there for them. So I guess if I had a bottom line, as we always say around here, my bottom line is that sort of what I alluded to in my opening statements, that we've got to ensure that women have the power to make these decisions themselves, and the insurance coverage ought to be there for them, regardless at what age they want to have the screening. And so that's sort of how I'm weighing this report. Good on one hand, perhaps bad on the other hand, if it sends the wrong signal out. And I guess I would ask you, it was not in any way your intention or at all to send any signal out, or you would deny that there should be anything read into that to insurance companies that they could in any way cut back on coverage for women in their 30s, 20s, I don't care, if they in fact want this screening for themselves.
From my reading of the clear intention of the panel, they did not intend that message at all.
I think that's an important message to send out. Very important.
I think, too, in actually the consensus panel report, it recommended that women who choose to have mammograms during this age period would receive reimbursement for it. Yeah. That was the panel's recommendation.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Let me say one other thing. There is also a difference between population screening, addressing all women, and the issues that you raised of women with, for example, a particular family history or a medical condition or particular reason that would lead her to decide that at the age of 30 or 35 it was medically appropriate, specifically not as a population screening, but of her own as an individual test, and that's a very different issue.
Well, I guess the other thing that I'm concerned, when it gets to that age group, I agree that it ought to be that individual making that decision, but the coverage ought to be there fully. I'm also concerned about where there is no dispute about the benefit of mammography for women over the age of 60 or 62 or 65. I forget what the age.
50.
What is it?
50.
Well, I thought there was no dispute over age 60. There's some dispute 50, and then it gets less and less because of age factors. But what I'm concerned about, if it is 50, then what can we do if less than 50%, I understand, less than 50% of the women in that age group are in fact getting mammograms, and there's no dispute about the benefit of that, what can we do to raise that 50% level up? Dr. Blumenthal?
I think there are a number of educational programs underway, as I mentioned in my testimony, that the NIH and the CDC have programs where they are working in partnership with other public and private sector organizations, from the YWCA to the Association of Retired Persons, to really reach priority and underserved populations, to educate and motivate them using community education methods to use this life-saving technology. And additionally, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has a program that provides low-cost or free mammography to women who cannot afford them. And I think that, again, this has really increased the utilization of this important procedure.
Klausner, I believe that you agree with us that there has been a bad, erroneous signal sent through the baffling draft report of this advisory committee. But this advisory committee is not your council. It's not the one that will decide if you're going to issue guidelines or if you're going to issue statements of scientific fact. My question to you is, what are you going to recommend to the panel that will come out of the National Cancer Institute, which is the lead government organization, as a recommendation? Are you going to suggest that we go back to clear guidelines that state what the potential risks might be? Or are you going to let this report, with which I think you've said you disagree, continue to muddy the water?
We do not want to muddy the water. I think we're going to work very hard to be as clear as absolutely possible. I have promised the National Cancer Advisory Board that the whole Institute will work very closely with them in formulating exactly our position, and I feel it would actually be unfair to them to prefigure what I think they should conclude. That's going to be an important process, an important discussion which we will have openly, and together come to a position as to guidelines or not guidelines, as to information, as to educational products, as to the whole range of things that the NCI needs to do to be very clear about information concerning mammography.
What would be the timetable of the action of the panel so that NCI would have a position, which you don't now have?
Yes.
Which you have, but have changed, and now we're hoping you're going to be a little more clear.
Well, the meeting of the National Cancer Advisory Board is the 25th and 26th of February, and I think it is going to be very much depending upon what is agreed there, what work needs to be done to craft our positions. We will move as quickly as we can, and that's what we promise. A number of organizations are now in the process with new information, with evolving information. I think the American Cancer Society is planning a March meeting to re-examine their guidelines. So this is a time in which, with new information coming out, new analyses, we need to take the time. We need to do it as quickly as possible, but we make sure what we do right, we do clearly, and we do well. Now, mammography is clearly changing. One of the limitations of the studies we're talking about is some of them are 30 years old using outdated mammographic technology. Mammography, while it's an old technology, has gotten better. Reading has gotten better, film's gotten better, and I suspect there's no question it's continuing to get better. I would imagine.
Is it true that breast cancer grows once it is or once it's there, whether it's detected or not, it grows faster in younger women before the age of 50?
There is mixed evidence about that. There is probably overall cancer in younger women is somewhat more aggressive. But as I said, I think the problem is lumping lots of different diseases. There are many different breast cancers, some of which grow slowly, some of which spread when they're still so small. That's probably why mammography couldn't work, even if it saw it when it was small, if it already had spread. Those differences mean that breast cancer is different diseases, and those different diseases will be spread probably differentially across different ages. That's really important, that we shift our focus to making sure that we're treating and approaching the right disease with the right treatment. We can't lump all breast cancers together. Some grow slowly, some grow rapidly, some spread very poorly, and some spread very rapidly and very early. They're different diseases.